Hello, everybody. Welcome to this video, which is called Reading Strategies for Success. One of the most effective ways of enhancing your skill as a writer is to hone your skills as an attentive reader. It has been said that while there are plenty of readers who don't write, there are no writers who don't read. While reading is a critical skill for thriving in any knowledge-based environment, such as a university or a profession, it plays a unique role in the development of a person's writing skills, providing models of rhetorical effectiveness and simply serving as the kind of verbal and conceptual input that your brain can mix around and use to make new ideas out of. Developing consistent and attentive reading habits is the best way to develop an ear for sentence structure and paragraph development. Moreover, because language takes place in a webiform network of infinite connectivity, every sentence you ever read can suggest other sentences that branch out from it: rebuttals, extensions, inversions, associations, implications, applications, etc., that represent potential starting points for new pieces of writing. It is true that a lot of information is available these days through videos and podcasts and other media that don't involve reading, but in the same way and for the same reasons that writing is a kind of high-end version of oral communication, reading about something in an article or book introduces you into a greater level of precision, detail, and a degree of sustained depth that no other medium approaches. Of course, you can listen to audiobooks or have your computer read articles to you, and reading in this way activates the same critical cognitive effects as visual reading. Any form of engagement with an alphabetical text, however, can be optimized by practicing a few simple strategies. These strategies break down into two categories: mental strategies and active strategies. Mental strategy number one: know your goal. There are actually many different ways of reading, and they generally exist on a continuum of attentiveness from skimming on the low side of the scale and what is sometimes called close reading on the high side. As we all know, skimming a text involves glancing over it to get a kind of aerial view of how long it is, what it talks about, and how it's written. Although skimming might get a bad reputation, it is actually a very useful way to begin any reading project. Start off by familiarizing yourself with the general terrain of the text. How long are the paragraphs? Are the sentences easy or hard to understand? How long do you think it will take you to read it? These questions give you a general sense of what you're getting into, and the importance of this kind of pre-skimming to the reading process is one of the reasons that printed texts are more intellectually manipulable than audio or video texts. On the other end of the scale, there is close reading, which involves rigorous analysis of the linguistic and cultural nuances of individual words and phrases. Lawyers interpreting legal statutes and poetry professors studying Shakespeare tend to bring this level of attentiveness to the kind of reading they do. For the most part, however, academic and professional writing takes place in a mid-range, which also involves a lot of variability, from the kind of reading you do when you have a quiz the next morning on a textbook chapter to the kind of reading you'll do when you are expected to demonstrate a general familiarity with a text in preparation for a class discussion. Thinking about the degree of familiarity that you want to achieve with the text you're reading will help you calibrate your level of attentiveness accordingly. Mental strategy number two: pay attention. Pay attention, and pay attention to whether you're paying attention. Reading demands a specific kind of attentive attentiveness, an attentiveness that is aware of itself being attentive. Obviously, people pay a kind of attention when they are playing games on their phone or watching cat videos, but this is typically a kind of immersive, passive attention. You can zone out and pay attention at the same time. Readers also zone out sometimes, but when they do, although their eyes may be scanning over lines of text, they are not really reading in the full sense of the word. Everyone who has ever read anything has had the experience of realizing that although they've just read a paragraph, a page, or a whole book, they have no idea what happened. Like I say, every reader has this experience sometimes, but a good reader recognizes it happening and goes back to reread what they don't remember with renewed attentiveness. The attentive attentiveness of reading operates on two frequencies at once: one frequency that pays attention to what the text is talking about, and another frequency that registers the reader's own understanding of the meaning of the text. This can be a challenging mindset to internalize, and the active strategies that I will discuss shortly help to support the cultivation of this kind of metacognitive mode of attentiveness. Mental strategy number three: look for the markers of meaning. As we talk about throughout this class, nonfiction writing is characterized by a set of very consistent conventions that are intended to help writers express ideas clearly and to help readers identify and understand these ideas. These markers are usually very easy to find. The title, the opening sentence, the last sentence of the first paragraph, the first sentence of long body paragraphs, and the first sentence of the last paragraph are some of the most conspicuous hotspots where writers place their big ideas. Part of the pre-skimming technique previously described should involve looking for these markers and using them to guide your understanding of the perspective that the writer wants us to consider. Let's look at an example. For the remainder of this mini-lecture, I'll be referring to an opinion essay by Frank Bruni called Our Semicolons Ourselves. You may want to pause the video to read it, or even print it out and refer to it as you watch the rest of the video. Before reading the article, I want to get a general sense of what it's going to say. In this case, the title doesn't really help. Is this really going to be a whole essay about semicolons? So I have to dig a little deeper. The next stop is the first sentence, where I can learn that the essay has something to do with the writer's perspective as a writing teacher. And the last sentence of the first paragraph poses a question that the essay will supposedly go on to answer. Does it matter? I might not know exactly what Bruni is debating about, but I have enough information to know that the point of the essay will be to hash out this question. I can also look a little further and perceive that the first few paragraphs after the first one seem to be the arguments that it does not matter, and then Bruni spends the rest of the essay specifying different reasons why he thinks it matters. With this framework in place, it's relatively easy for me to anticipate the kinds of things that Bruni is likely to say, and to understand how the different paragraphs tie together into a coherent expression of an opinion. Mental strategy number 4. Read it more than once. Now that we have located our markers of meaning, we're ready to read through the whole thing. We can fill in the details to see that Bruni is arguing that writing, specifically formal academic style writing, matters. It helps you at work, it helps you think, and it can even be pleasurable. But for short academic readings, and for any text that you really want to work closely with, the first reading is just step 1. When we reread Bruni's essay a second time, we are familiar enough with the shape of the whole thing that we can now see how the different subparts fit into the big picture. We might notice the general structure of arguments, which proceeds from something more mundane, using writing to be good at your job, to something more profound, thinking better, and then transcends to something ineffable, the unspecified pleasures afforded by good writing it and reading it. So read once to get the big picture, and read a second time to pay attention to the details. Another way of thinking about it is to read a first time with a sense of open-minded acceptance of the author's point of view, and then read a second time with a more skeptical, critical point of view. The open-minded reading helps you to sympathize with your writer's point of view, since it's impossible to respond authentically to a point of view that you don't understand, whereas the second reading allows you to assert your freedom as a reader to intervene and talk back. On this second, more skeptical reading, I might notice that Bruni doesn't really engage with the objections he dismisses in the opening paragraphs. I might think that Bruni's own self-confessed love of grammatical sentences makes him biased, and that his logic is extremely subjective at key moments, as in paragraph 6 when he says, "If you're honest with yourself, you know, ... Do I?" Or in the second to last paragraph, the tortured, "You show me this and I'll show you that" argument. I can also criticize this essay for never really articulating its thesis, for drifting along in a kind of stream of consciousness chain of associations, and for relying on platitudes and broad generalizations. That was fun. Now I feel like I have something to say about the article. Active strategies. In addition to having the right mindset as a reader, there are also things that you can actively do to increase your ability to read with comprehension and sustained attentiveness. Specifically, in the same way that reading can help you to become a better writer, writing can help you to become a better reader in at least 3 different but interconnected ways. Active strategy number 1. Take notes. The mere act of holding a pen in your hand as you read can signal to your brain that you are actively engaged as a reader. If you are typing notes into a laptop as you read, a similar effect is activated. When you really want to work closely with the text, the best thing you can do is to keep a written record of the author's main points, ideally making at least one note for each paragraph. These are my notes on the Bruni article. If you pause the video here and compare it with the article, you'll see that each note here represents one paragraph of Bruni's article translated into my own words. After translating the details of Bruni's argument into my own notes, not only has my brain had a chance to think through each of Bruni's points, but it's also easy for me to start to stir in my own ideas about Bruni's ideas. In fact, taking these notes, I had to deliberately, and not entirely successfully, keep myself from editorializing so that I could stick to my goal of demonstrating the use of these notes as supports for comprehension and recall. In your own notes, however, You should feel free to write out whatever thoughts occur to you as you are transcribing ideas from the author's words into your own. These kinds of side notes can be the seeds of your own original writing. Active strategy number 2, write a summary. The best way to clarify your understanding of something you've read is to write a brief summary paragraph. While throughout this class I usually invite students to follow your thoughts wherever they go, the summary is a specific kind of writing project in that in order for it to do its job of clarifying the writer's argument, an effective summary sticks to the facts. There will be time to respond with your own ideas in the next stage, but as mentioned previously, the first step to responding to someone is giving them the respect to make sure that you fully understand what they have said. The basic formula for writing a summary is very simple. State the thesis of the article and try to identify the three main points. This is the technique I've tried to exemplify in my summary of Bruni's article, which goes as follows. Frank Bruni argues that skillful writing remains relevant even in a time when AI is doing a lot of writing for us and when correct grammar can seem antiquated. Bruni argues that writing is a valuable professional skill because good writing can be impactful, because many workplaces rely on written communication, and because skillful writers often take on leadership roles in workplace environments. He also argues that writing can help you think more clearly because it forces you to concentrate and elaborate. He ends the essay by insisting that skillful writing can also be a source of pleasure, and that this pleasure should be celebrated in the writing classroom. In this summary, I resisted the temptation to include my own thoughts, simply presenting the thesis of Bruni's article in the first sentence, followed by his three main points. I even broke the first main point into three sub-points to fill out my summary with a robust amount of detail. Having written out my paragraph notes made this summary extremely easy to write. Writing up a summary of something you've read helps you to ensure that you understand the writer's argument well enough to explain it in your own words. It also serves as a record that can help remind you of what the writer said, which is particularly helpful when you're consulting multiple sources for a research project. The next step in this process is to respond to the writer's point of view with your own opinions, your own questions, and your own writing. We'll talk more about this step in the next video, but in order to respond meaningfully to a piece of writing, it is necessary to take the time to make sure that you thoroughly understand what the author is saying. Even if the chatbots do manage to do all of your writing for you in the future, they will never be able to invent a machine that will read for you. Practicing and internalizing these reading comprehension strategies can enhance your ability to succeed in any future that you may find yourself in.